25th gene key, the myth of the sacred wound. Programming partner, 46th gene key. Codon ring, the ring of humanity. 10, 17, 21, 25, 38, 51. Physiology, heart. Amino acid, arginine. The 25th shadow, constriction. Constriction training. If there is a single gene key among the 64 gene keys that captures the essence of the entire work, it is this 25th gene key. Here lies the secret that men and women have always sought, the secret of love. Here too lies the foil of love, the 25th shadow of constriction. Constriction exists wherever love is absent, and it is the underlying source of all human suffering. It is self-perpetuating because to constrict life in yourself or in another is to welcome more suffering into your life. The shadow of constriction operates at all levels of society. In the individual, constriction occurs first and foremost in your breathing. It creates tightness around the chest and compresses tension into the abdomen. Most of us enter constriction training at a very young age. We learn it through the breathing patterns of our parents, even while we are still in the womb. It is even there at the point of conception, passed subtly from the sperm to the egg as a code containing the genetic blueprints of the constriction felt by your ancestors as they struggled from their births to their deaths. Here in the 25th shadow, we find the basis for the myth of the sacred wound, the source of all human suffering and a transgenetic anomaly literally wound around the helix of all human DNA. The 25th shadow is the great turbine of human seeking. Everywhere you go, you carry this constriction with you. If you tune into your body, you will sense it deep inside you, and your response or reaction to the discomfort it brings defines the shape of your life. If you recoil from the pain, you will live a life of denial and distraction, a half-life lost in the pale shadowlands of mediocrity. The harder you choke down the pain inside, the tighter it engulfs you. If, however, you have the courage to honor and listen to the wound within, everything will change for you. You will discover that if something is wound around you, constricting you, it must have a purpose, and that purpose is to unwind. Thus, as you face your pain through the gift of acceptance, the wound begins to unwind, and another higher destiny opens before you. Constriction is also found in our communities, through our need for laws, territory, barbed wire fences, passports and money. Above all, perhaps, are the massive constrictions we unconsciously place upon ourselves through our measuring of time. Our total dependence on time creates an enormous energy field of tension and pressure on a global level. The other great agent of the 25th shadow is the human mind. Almost all systems of thought create more constriction inside you, with the exception of those that lead you into deeper acceptance of your true nature. Just as the 25th gift opens avenues at all levels of creation, the 25th shadow closes them down. The programming partner of the 25th shadow is the 46th shadow of seriousness, which teaches you that the tighter you hold on to anything, whether an opinion, a person, or an object, the more constricting it becomes for you. The 25th shadow distorts the universal love of the siddhi into the lust for matter. This manifests as obsession with materialism, the most obvious direction for the flow of constricted fear to take. The urge to allay the fear becomes the need to reduce the universe to objects and to hold on to them as tightly as possible. Anyone who clings to the objects around them is deeply under the influence of the 25th shadow. This can also apply to relationships. In relationships, this human tendency to try to hold on to others as physical anchors distorts and restricts the natural flow of love between people. Love grows through freedom and dies through constriction. It is very important that you understand the 25th shadow because it represents the beginning of your journey into form. To be alive in a physical body can be experienced as the ultimate constriction, especially if your reality is rooted in fear. Fear is the byproduct of all low-frequency energy fields. Constriction is the physical manifestation of fear at an individual and universal level. Moreover, fear creates a very effective biofeedback loop that ensures its own survival. It's really very clever when you think about it. Fear is afraid of itself, which ensures that it never accepts itself, which ensures that it always survives. There are different kinds of fear as well. There is the fear that is hot-wired into all physical creatures, the genetic fear that ensures our survival as individuals and groups or tribes. Then there are the more pervasive manifestations of fear, the fear of war or chaos or cataclysm, which exists at a collective level within the human unconscious. The deepest fear of all is the fear of not existing, the fear of death on the individual level, or the fear of extinction on the collective level. Such fears form the general backdrop awareness field of our planet. Then we come to pure fear, which does not even have a target. Pure fear is simply a collective thought form that hangs like a grey fog across our world. This is the 25th shadow, a wound beyond understanding, an endless chasm leading downward, a vast constricting pressure choking the life out of you, and yet, ultimately, nothing more than pure illusion. This shadow has a divine purpose. It holds a great design within it, and ever draws you on toward your inevitable destiny in the 25th city. To really grasp what the 25th shadow is, you have to see how radical the 25th city is at the other end of the spectrum. It advocates a life without boundaries or constrictions of any kind. The process of entering into the sacred wound is therefore a process of unraveling and unwinding the karmic knots and cords that come with our lives and our relationships. As we learn to face our wounds, so our journey gradually becomes clearer and easier. This is the epitome of the journey through the 25th gene key, the path from fear to love. Repressive nature. Ignorant. The 25th shadow teaches us something profound about the nature of ignorance. In reality, it is a form of repression. All repressive natures essentially use their energy to maintain a state of ignorance. Ignorance in this context refers to the inability to look at your own pain. The deeper your personal wound is held captive inside you, the more your higher faculties shut down. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is misery, but it doesn't recognize this unless something momentous happens. Because of the pervasiveness of the shadow frequency, ignorance is still one of the greatest diseases in our world. It takes a massive collective effort to constrict the life force wanting to burst from our bodies. The moment something triggers the letting go of your pain, there is a flood of release and relief around your heart, as the shadow of constriction is weakened. Whether you repress this pain again after the event is another matter entirely. Reactive nature. Cold. Just as the repressive nature is unable to own the depth of the sacred wound within, the reactive nature is unwilling to own it. These people express their pain through projection. Thus, they are cut off from their hearts in a different way. The repressive nature does not know how it feels, whereas the reactive nature hates how it feels. It expresses that hatred by being cold-hearted. As we repeatedly see through the 64 shadows, all reactive natures express fear through anger. So these people take out their pain on the world, especially on those closest to them. In effect, it is impossible for anyone to come very close to these people. Their volatile nature quickly pushes away any form of genuine warmth because it reminds them of their own pain. As with all reactive natures, this often leads to abusive or very short-lived relationships. The 25th gift, acceptance. Accepting love. Here, in the 25th gift, we arrive at one of the greatest and most powerful of all human gifts, the gift of acceptance. Because this 25th gift represents the portal to the true nature of the universe as love, it has incredible relevance for all human beings. The flowering of love follows the burgeoning of acceptance. Acceptance is based on taking the soft approach to life, as the 25th gift's programming partner, the 46th gift of delight, testifies. The path of love is the path of acceptance, which is not a technique but more of a seeing. In order to accept something about yourself, and especially something uncomfortable, it first must be recognized. This kind of acceptance takes place when you build up the courage to look into your own shadow. In the 25th shadow, we saw how fear creates its own biofeedback loop, which maintains this constriction of the life force inside you. The only way of breaking this loop is to have the courage to simply feel the fear. As soon as you reduce fear down to its essentials, that is, a physical sensation deeply entrenched within the chemistry of your body, you discover the great secret of acceptance. You no longer need to be afraid of fear. Fear is the very vibration of the sacred wound, which at a deeper level makes it holy ground. In allowing yourself to experience the true constriction of this primal wound, you begin to feel a subtle softening around your chest, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, your breathing deepens. This softening process of accepting whatever you feel at any given moment builds its own momentum in your life, and after a period of time, you will really feel different. You are moving out of the lower frequency fields of the victim consciousness and experiencing more of life itself. As the constriction of the 25th shadow loosens its hold, you also access far more energy and optimism. Optimism is not the opposite of pessimism, but its true underlying nature when freed from constriction. The state of acceptance is akin to spiritual springtime. Everything seems possible again, as everything in your life begins to flow more freely and easily. This will manifest outside you as universal synchronicity is activated through the 25th gift. However, even at the gift level of frequency, suffering still exists, and it keeps returning to test your level of acceptance. There are many layers of frequency bands between the shadow, gift, and siddhi levels. Over time, your acceptance deepens even further until you finally let go of your need to escape the wound altogether. At this heightened stage, your acceptance becomes complete and you spontaneously make the leap to the siddhic level. It is important to understand that this is all a process, but there is no real technique to it, even though it may begin with technique. Any attempt at trying to accept your nature only reveals a further level of subtle unacceptance. What you are really accepting, therefore, is your own utter helplessness. If you have the gift of acceptance in your hologenetic profile or feel a strong connection to it, you will probably be the kind of person who feels like you belong everywhere. You will likely not judge others in the same way that most people do. Acceptance is not something you can easily learn. It is often something you are born with, and the more accepting you are, the more life will tend to test you. You will quite possibly undergo challenges to test and deepen your sense of innocence and trust. The 25th gift makes it difficult to hold a grudge or worry too much about life. You will walk through life with an air of another world about you, while at the same time being deeply grounded and open to others. In a nutshell, you carry the seed of love. The 25th gene key is the master key within the genetic codon group known as the Ring of Humanity. The 25th gene key is the core of your humanity. It is the irritation inside the oyster that eventually causes the formation of the pearl, and the pearl is acceptance. Acceptance is the Grail that you are seeking. When you can finally accept everything in your life just as it is right now, you will have embraced the human wound. Acceptance comes in layers, layers upon layers, just like the tightly wound genetic double helix itself. You have to relax these layers deep inside you so that you can feel the flow of love once more moving within your being. The more you can accept yourself and others, the more love will bloom in your life. It is as beautiful and as simple as that. The 25th Siddhi, Universal Love, the Rose and the Chalice. The 25th Siddhi is a special Siddhi, whether it happens to be within your hologenetic profile or not. Every gene key exists inside each of us, and the 25th gene key is the primary archetype of love. Behind the mystery of the 25th gift lies the mystery of suffering, and as we have seen through the 25th shadow, it is a theme integral to the evolution of human consciousness. This connection to human suffering brings the 25th gene key into close relationship with the 22nd gene key, by whose grace deep acceptance and love may be found. The sacred wound only reveals its true purpose through the 25th Siddhi of universal love. Within the 64 Siddhis, there are many other variations of love, and in fact every Siddhi is a fractal aspect of universal love. Examples are the ecstatic sensual love of the 46th Siddhi, the devotional heart love of the 29th Siddhi, the intoxication of the 56th Siddhi, and the compassion of the 36th Siddhi. The 25th Siddhi is love itself as the source of all, and in this sense it can be called universal love. In all cultures, this love is represented through the great myths, and in many of these myths it is symbolized by the sacred symbol of blood. The symbol of blood has many meanings and levels. It represents the conduit for the sacred wound itself, the blood that passes from human to human down the ages and that contains the codes for our ultimate healing. On a more universal level, it symbolizes consciousness, that which moves through and behind all forms, knitting them together into a great cosmic pattern. Perhaps the best known of all myths concerning blood is the myth of Christ, whose blood is said to have been shed for all humanity. There is a deep secret concealed in this myth. The sacred wound that hides within each human being can be understood at the three main levels of consciousness. At the shadow frequency, the wound maintains human suffering. At the gift frequency, the wound provokes humanity to evolve. And at the Siddhic frequency, the wound reveals humanity's true nature as an expression of universal love. Only at the Siddhic level of consciousness can you understand the true meaning of the blood of Christ. When your frequency is lifted up to the Siddhic level, everything takes on a cosmic dimension, and you have no choice but to take into yourself the sufferings of all beings. In terms of our genetics, the blood of Christ represents the absolute acceptance of the suffering of all men and women from the beginning of time, all of which is encoded in the human genome. This is why it is said that a being at the highest frequency takes on the sins, the suffering of humanity, whether they are termed a Christ or a Bodhisattva. This is the only way to attain the highest state of universal love. At the gift level of frequency, you begin to take responsibility for your own suffering. As your experience of suffering deepens, it is experienced as unending, and you begin to transform the ancestral wounds of those who have come before you. The deeper you move into acceptance, the more you have to open your heart to human pain, and the more pain you transform, the more love you feel. At a certain level, The process loses its personal flavor and takes on a universal dimension. At the level of the 25th Siddhi, a permanent leap is made whereby everything becomes acceptance and the rose of universal love blooms. This is the true beauty and purpose of all suffering. There is another mystery surrounding the symbol of blood, symbolized by the vessel that holds the blood. This vessel has been given a variety of names in many cultures. Sometimes it is seen as a cauldron or vial containing an elixir, and other times simply a cup or chalice. In the Grail legends, it is said that whomever drinks from the cup of Christ will live forever, and if the king drinks from it, the land will be restored. The 25th Siddhi is the ultimate grail of all seekers. That which we seek is our original nature, and it lies within us, hiding within our shadows and wounds. Everyone in your life is part of your own wound and the healing of that wound. Through gracious acceptance, you will begin to feel the extent of the pain that lies within and all about you. You need never be afraid of this pain, as it is the direct and only route leading to the heart of your heart. We can all take heart from this greatest of truths. The other truth that emerges from this 25th gene key is the resolution of an old mystical chestnut about seeking. It is said that the greatest obstacle to realization is the seeking of it. All spiritual paths begin with the urge to bring an end to personal suffering. It is your unacceptance of suffering that makes you seek, and as you seek, you eventually realize that your seeking is based on the urge to avoid your wound. This revelation gives rise to the quantum leap to the Siddhic level of consciousness. Thus it is said that only when all hope of finding the Grail is lost can the Grail finally be found. Those beings who have attained realization through this 25th Siddhi become, in some form, legends. Their lives follow a familiar mythical pattern. They are people whose lives reflect the grappling with their wound, whether that is the wound of duality transcended by the Buddha, or the wound of Christ hanging on the cross. They take paths that others have never traveled, and in doing so they take into themselves the suffering of the world. The aura of such a person shines like a light down the centuries, and is felt within the bloodlines of all future generations. Every time someone attains the 25th Siddhi, a great genetic constriction is removed throughout humanity. The love emanating within such people has an otherworldly quality. This is not human love as we know it, but universal love. The bodies of these people have undergone a radical transformation in order to be the receiver or chalice for pure consciousness, the uncontaminated blood of the universe.